Uh, now that we're over the helium, um, let's start this video. Let's start this episode in the Patriot Cinema podcast. Today, as you might have guessed, Hot Shots. This, I think, 90s classic was a great comedy. It brought together the talents of Charlie Sheen, Carrie Ellis, I think it is, and a lot of other actors I don't remember the name of. This movie was fun, clearly a spoof of Top Gun, and I don't know, like, this movie is good. It's funny in some ways, but sometimes they stretch the jokes out too much so that you just feel like, come on, get on with it. It's a good movie, but it's not a great comedy. These are the same guys who made Airplane and Naked Gun, but the trouble is this movie does run dry at a few points. You've got the helium joke is perfect. The joke with the native chieftain that Charlie Sheen's character is staying with is great. But then you got the horse riding montage, which was running for too long.
It dragged.
As much as I did like every time someone would sit down, the dog would yip at them, that eventually ran a little dry. Some of the romance scenes were a little dull in this movie. They fixed that up in the next movie. Yes, they have even more scenes to an extent that are romantic in the second movie. But the jokes are better timed and better done. They caught on, yes, to the fact that Charlie Sheen does have chemistry with his female co-star, but they learned how to write the script around those two and how to better kind of, I don't know, like they just figured it out better. The second movie is way better, and they have the talents of, what's his name? The guy who did the Colonel from First Blood, who's one of the greatest actors who ever lived, although he played a lot of military officers in movies, and he plays them to perfection. And although his best role will always be First Blood, where he plays Rambo's colonel and former, military officer, because that scene in First Blood, when he's looking down at Rambo as Rambo breaks down with a look of shock on his face because he didn't realize. He thought Rambo had it all together, but no, Rambo never did. Rambo had simply repressed everything until, it exploded. That scene will always be one of the greatest scenes in cinematic history. And the only reason I mention it is that there is some influence there as well in this movie. But about Hot Shots, a lot of the jokes are quite good. The Admiral isn't always... Sometimes he's funny, sometimes he's not. When he decides that, the enemy's at 12 o'clock, time to break for lunch. That's pretty funny. His quick one-liners about, how dare you try to get my soldiers killed? Don't you know that's my job? And then punches the villain, was hilarious. But other jokes with him, like him passing a claw through one ear out the other, ran a little dry.
That was a bit too Looney Tunes for my taste.
Agreed.
I like the jokes where there's the unintentional deaths every once in a while.
Those are the funniest. But too much of the Looney Tunes stuff was in this movie. And I don't know what else to say. Like, everybody's great, but they get a better cast in the second movie. They get a much better script. Although that said, Carrie Ellis is missed. It would have been nice to bring him at least back into the second movie, because I think he's missing. I know it would have been an overstuffed cast, but he shines a light on every script that he gets involved in. Although I still think his best work, people are going to think this is weird, but was not Princess Bride, but Jungle Book. His work in the Jungle Book movie from 1994 was perfect. And it's just such a perfect movie, that. But he was perfect as the villain, and his chemistry with Sam Neill, oh dear heavens, I wanted to see more of those two, as well as him and Jason Lee Scott. But this movie, he really, really did bounce really well off of Charlie Sheen. But as much as I find Charlie Sheen very funny in these movies, I found Cary Elwes a lot funnier than Sheen. But the trouble is, I kind of found like Sheen was unsure of what he was doing here, and I don't think the directors fully knew what they were going to do with him at a few points. And it's not until the second movie that you see that Sheen's a lot more comfortable, and he's basically playing almost a younger version of a Leslie Nielsen type of character, and he's just so ridiculous and stupid and funny in the second movie that you're like, yeah, that's it, that's perfect. Sheen is perfect in that movie. And had they brought Cary Elwes, I think that this would have bounced the two off better off each other. Not that Sheen doesn't bounce perfectly off of Ryan Stiles or the actor who plays Mr. Bean. I forget his name right now, but the reality is that this is not Hot Shots Part 2. But this movie is quite good. It has a lot of spoof moments and gags at the expense of Top Gun. But what are your thoughts on this thing overall?
I enjoy a lot of the visual gags. Like, whenever the planes are about to go off, you have, for example, the guy with the flags.
Yeah, you've got the guy getting his groceries out.
You've got one of them, the Garfield on a glass. You've got Charlie Sheen's character's father flips the upside down and everything, like car keys, money, and whatnot. Slam.
Oh, yeah. Into the top of the plane, then back down when he flips it back straight up.
You've got one of them roasting a hot dog.
Yeah. Oh, when the engines are starting. Yeah. There was also a marshmallow scene with that.
Mm-hmm.
But as for how this movie fits in with patriotism, this movie pokes fun at patriotism. But I do think that as much as it pokes fun at it, it does cast it in a positive light in a way. All the patriotic characters are generally dumb in this movie, but most of them are actually deep down good people. They're decent. The villains are those who have a total absence of all patriotism and sense of loyalty. And to them, American soldiers and American civilians and lives, and even European ones, are meaningless. They have no value whatsoever. And you've got as much as, yes, the one admiral is likely to get all his soldiers killed, and he takes pride in that, there is still a passion for America and a love for it that radiates throughout all of his characters' scenes. And the characters never slam on America or something, although except in some underhanded, backhanded ways. But the truth is, they love their country, and the movie's just poking fun at their love for their country. But it shines it in a positive light. Like, yes, we're going to poke fun at it, but patriotism itself and love for your country is a beautiful thing. And
they're all doing what they're doing. They all volunteered for the love of their country.
Yeah, and now the historical context is probably that of Top Gun, in that they're fighting in the midst of the Cold War. So you got to bear in mind, Top Gun historically was set in the Cold War. And this is important to bear in mind because, well, it is in a way a historical movie. Yeah, we're skirting the rules a little, but given this channel, the History Corner, but this love for their country and this hatred for traitors who are siding with, well, the enemy, who are communists and dictators, and who are weapon stealers who think, well, we're going to sacrifice a lot of American lives in order to sell our superior goods to save more lives is nonsense. Basically, the ends justify the means. And they want total control over the U.S. military in a way, just as they have been selling their goods to the opposite side. This is a very, well, underhanded, kind of communist, dictatorial, well, fascist way of thinking. And I know people are going to say that's a generalization, but it is generally how these governments come to power. There's a sense of callousness and of, well, even if we have to side with our enemy against ourselves so that we gain power, well, that's basically how it works. That's, for example, how Mr. Mustache, and that we're not allowed to say the name of on YouTube, and Stalin and whatnot did gain power. They weren't always very loyal people to their own countries. And there's also Mussolini. But in the Cold War context of this movie, it's spoofing the Cold War, but it is showing that, well, love for your country is a good thing. And yeah, I don't have much more to say about that. So let's rate this movie. I'm gonna say it's a 1 3/4. It's a good movie, but it's below average.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement as sometimes you lose track of the story because of some of the overextended scenes.
And some of the jokes run for too long. And some of the jokes that do run for too long are not funny. But the second movie really solves all the problems. But the next movie we'll be reviewing will be a movie set in the Cold War called Top Gun. You might have heard of it, especially in recent days, considering it's got a sequel now.
The movie, not the roller coaster.
There was seriously a roller coaster at one time?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Cool. I learned something new. Anyways, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Charlie Sheen's character launching a chicken